Hello, welcome to the third step in our switch over to TransactionDesk. In this short video, we're going to just do an overview of creating a transaction. When you log in, obviously we've done this before, you end up at your agent dashboard. To create a transaction, there's probably a create transaction widget on your dashboard unless you've changed it, and then the widget's not there. The other way to create a transaction would be actually to go over here to the transaction desk part of it here and hit add, and that would create a transaction also. So you have the transaction dashboard and you have the agent dashboard. So we're just going to go from the agent dashboard, hit create transaction. Okay, if you looked at the email that I sent along with this, when you create a transaction, we want to name it. So you're going to name according to the convention. So if it's 59 Smith Street, you're going to do Smith Street and 59. This makes it so that you can easily find the transactions. All of our transactions are based on street addresses. Please do not name your transactions after your client. Only you know that your client was whatever their name is, and when you name a transaction after that, trying to search for it in the future makes it really difficult. Okay, if for some reason this was a listing that you did and sold, and then say later on they wanted to relist it, and there's already a Smith Street 59 and it won't let you create that transaction, you can always add the date after it, and then it'll allow you to create that transaction. So then when we search for Smith Street later on, we'll be able to see that, oh, there was a Smith Street originally, and then there was one at a later date. So that way we'll be able to keep track of the individual transaction. Okay, so just for fun, we're going to leave it at Smith Street 59. We're going to say that this is a listing. Okay, so under template, this is really important because this sets the stage for your checklists and your forms and documents that are attached to this transaction to make it a lot simpler for you to make your transaction. Okay, so under the templates, you're going to pick a template that's appropriate. Okay, only use the templates that have a PRG after their name. They're the ones that are specifically for our office. Okay, so if you look at these, all listings in Hudson County, that's one type. Commercial rental as the renting agent, you get the idea. Residential listing. So let's just pretend that this is in Central Jersey MLS. It used to be Middlesex MLS, now it's Central Jersey MLS. It's a residential listing that's not a rental. So that's pretty straightforward. You would pick that one. Okay. If it's a listing, then you're probably going to bring in data from Realist. And if you clicked on Realist, you would be able to search the property and bring in the data that would fill a lot of the property information for you, so you don't have to refill it. You do not have to import data. Okay, if it was a sale, you would probably bring it in from, it says Middlesex County MLS, they haven't updated yet that, so it should say Central Jersey MLS. And that would actually bring in the listing information into your contract and your other documents that you would have for this. So this would be a helpful thing to do if you're basing it on something that's already there. If it was a listing that was a previous listing, you could bring in that old listing data through this also. Okay. And then add me as the. So if you are the listing agent, obviously you're going to pick listing agent. If you're the selling agent, so if it's a contract, you're going to pick selling agent. Neither, you should be one or the other, not for nothing. The option of both. The only way that you would pick both initially is if you have the listing and you have the sale all at the same time. It happened the exact same day and you haven't done anything yet. If it's a listing that turns into a sale that you sell later on, you can change your role to both later on. If you use the use wizard, you'll be taken to the next detail pages. I strongly suggest this for creating transactions as it walks you through the process. If you don't use the use wizard, it just makes the baseline transaction, and then you have to go through and manually add the details later. So this is the information that we filled out. You click on create and it takes you to detail pages. Okay, here's the name of the transaction. Here's the original detail of the property, the transaction status. Okay, you have active, attorney review, closed. So these would be updated as you go through on the process. Right now it would be a listing, so you would make it an active listing. Okay, the street information, the street name, all this stuff would have filled in from the tax record if you had chosen the tax record, or from the MLS if you had chosen the MLS. Okay. Property information, property type. The more of this you fill out, the easier it makes your life later, because these details are what automatically fill the forms that are fillable and automatically populate from the MLS. If you just pick the forms and don't fill this information out, those fields will be blank and you have to fill them out on every single form. If you go through and fill out these details, the person's, the address, the name, all that will transfer over to all those same fields on all of the forms. So this is an important thing to do. Okay. So when you do the first page, you see step 1 of 5. If you hit next, you're taken to step 2 of 5. Transaction dates. Okay, listing date, expiration date, offer date. These you can update as you go along. You would put the dates that you know, like if it's listing today, there's your listing date. You put your expiration date, whatever that happens to be. Okay. You click the next. You would go to contacts. Okay, it automatically puts you in as the listing agent. It puts Partners Realty Group as the listing broker. Okay, you would want to add, okay, things like create a new transaction contact. You could put in the seller of the property. You could put in any of these type of people as you go through in the as the transaction goes. Okay, some of the templates have already have people built in. Like for example, let's see where it says seller. So you would actually click on the seller part of it and add that, because that's something that's typically with a listing. So just as an FYI, those are already added for you. And then anybody else that you would want to add to the process. Okay. Forms. These are some of the standard forms that go in with a listing. Now, again, I picked a template that has, forms that are typically used. You can add more forms, or you can delete forms that you don't need. For example, if they're doing a normal, this waiver broker cooperation, for example, if they're doing a normal listing where they're cooperating with everybody, you just delete that and it would take it right out of the system. Okay, so for this transaction, that wouldn't exist. If later on they change their mind, you can add it back in. But this gives you a base level to start out with. And again, on these forms, whatever you filled in on the detail page in step 1 will transfer over into these forms in the fillables. Okay. The last step is the documents. These are automatically added in. Okay. The fax back cover sheet. This is a sheet that if you print it out and put it on your whatever document you're sending and fax it, that document will go right into this transaction. So that's just kind of an FYI. These are typical documents that we would use in listings that we do that are not part of the forms. These are specific to the office. Hopefully someday they'll become fillable forms, and then everything will show up in the forms section, and you won't have to worry about having PDFs that aren't fillable. Okay, when you've finished with the steps 5 of 5, you just hit done, and it takes you out of the wizard. And in the transaction dashboard, which was this little house here, it makes the transaction. Here's your transaction. Here's the documents that you put in, and it added the checklists from the template for things that need to be done for this transaction. We're going to hit transaction checklists in the next video. This is enough for this, but you've just created your transaction. The following things need transactions. You have to have a transaction for any listing of a property, commercial, rental. You need a transaction for that. An offer for sale. Okay, if you write a contract for something or you write a lease for something, that needs to go into the transaction desk, because those have been required to be kept for 6 months by the broker. So even if it's not accepted, you have to put that offer into TransactionDesk. All right. If it's a contract or sale that has been accepted, obviously that has to go in. If you put it in as an offer, you can change it later to an accepted contract, and you would put the copy of the signed contract in addition to the signed offer. So, but if you happen to fill out the offer the same day that it's accepted as a sale, then that's fine. You put it in as a sale initially. You don't have to put it in as an offer. So that takes care of creating your transaction. The next email will be, kind of how do we look at making these transactions up to date as we go along with the different transaction processes.